Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. With me on the show this week is Lisa Welsh. Lisa is an accredited sex educator. We're going to talk about a lot of things in this episode. Her claim to fame on YouTube, she had a bit that went viral about pegging. So we're going to get into pegging and anal play. We're also going to talk about, like we always do, about how you can get the horny, amazing, dirty, lovely, sexual things you want from your partner tangibly. Lisa has a new program designed to help men get what they want from women, but also how to make women feel better pleasure. She's also worked with women. And so she's incredibly educated on how people can get what they want. And what happens if you find out that you're not sexually compatible with a partner? What then, right? Lisa tells a story about an orgy she went to that turned out to be a little weird. We're going to get into that. At the end of the episode, Lisa gives some advice to the men on how to eat pussy and some advice to the women on how to suck cock. She also shows us a self-portrait that was painted by a man with his penis. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Lisa Welsh.
This week's conversation.
Lisa Welsh, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
Dustin, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure to be here today. I'm excited to see what we get into.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes knowledge for the audience. We've been trying to put this together for months, really, truly. And so we're finally here. And I'm excited because I think, everything that you're doing that I know of, and I kind of partially, I like to go into these things not knowing everything because I like to discover along with the audience. I think that leads to a bit of chaos and excitement. And so, but the things I have seen are really like just your content, like on Instagram, right, is profound in the way that I feel like it helps people right away. Like, it's not like, hey, buy my book and I'll teach you how to eat pussy, or like what you don't, it's not that. Like, you actually lead with like information, right? And then you're like, hey, if you want more. So for the audience members, for the party goers who are here, they don't know who you are, they don't know what you do. Could you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dustin. So yes, I'm Lisa Welsh. I'm an accredited sex educator. I'm based in South Africa, and I'm like a very geeky, nerdy sex educator. I work as the communications lead for the World Association for Sexual Health and a company called My Sexual Health. So I hold myself to very high standards because I get to work in these really cool circles. I'm so privileged to be a part of like the very medical side of sexual health and also the political side of sexual health. So while my corner of sexual health is really about how to have really fun sex in a relationship, my greater world that I'm part of holds me to very high standards. And so like you said, I'm not just going to give those little tips because I make sure that everything is like evidence-based and scientifically backed and culturally sensitive. And so I'm like a nerdy sex educator, and I love being able to translate all of that really cool stuff, like those incredible studies and these amazing minds that come up with these concepts, and translate it into a way that can be heard and understood and put into practice in bed. Like, that's actually what we want, right? So yeah, that's just a little bit of background.
Yeah, because I think people, myself included, I've been totally guilty of this, even though I host the show. But like, you'll read something on Instagram, or maybe you'll even click on an article. Maybe you're feeling like you want to read for once, right? And so you go and you click on an article and you learn some technique, or you learn some sort of mind thing that will help you have better orgasms, give better orgasms, all that, and then you don't put it into practice, right? And so, I mean, that's the same with everything. We have a lot of dating coaches on the show, and lately a lot of them have said, hey, I teach these guys, they spend all this money, and even I'll teach these women, and then they'd like, I don't want to say they choke, but they just don't put into practice all this stuff that they've learned. And I feel like that happens a lot with sexual things. Is that just humans being dumb fucking humans, or we're lazy, or is there some sort of fear around it where we can read about it, we can watch the porn, we can watch the instructional video, but then it's like when it comes time to tell the partner, like, hey, I'd like to eat your ass, or I'd like to finger you, you just don't, and you just freeze, right?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, you're right. I don't think it's laziness. I do think it's a lot to do with fear. And interestingly, I think it has a lot to do with being in a long-term relationship, because often when you meet somebody just like for a one night stand, you might be more up for doing stuff than you would with your husband, say you've been married to for 10 years, right? And it's this thing where we become more vanilla over time. Esther Perel's book, Mating in Captivity, speaks a lot about this. And it's just because you've kind of got this relationship structure. Maybe you've got a family and there are all of these kind of rules that you've put together in your life. So you've built a life. It's good. You're fun. You're friends. You love each other and everything feels cool. And then the better that gets, like the better the relationship structure gets, the scarier it is to like mess it up with sex, because sex is risky and sex is scary. You know, especially the longer you've been together, you kind of have an idea of who you are sexually and who they are sexually and what your sex life is. You put a definition on it. This is our sex life. This is what we do. And you have this kind of escalator of sex. Like so many couples end up with the same old routine where you start off maybe with a little like initiation, you know, maybe he says, oh, you know, it's not going to suck itself, or like, you know, grabs her bum or something. And then the foreplay is, you know, maybe a little bit of kissing, a little bit of boob rubbing, oral if you're lucky, moving on to intercourse, and then he comes and it's all over. Like that is quite normal for a lot of people. They might not want to admit it, but let me just, you know, answer yourself, listeners. Does that remind you of you? Because it did remind me of me, truly. And that's where we get on this escalator. And then it gets really scary to say, how about let's try this instead? Like even just changing the order of those steps of the escalator takes courage. Like it's vulnerable to put yourself out there and say, actually, I would quite like to try this. Or, you know, why don't we spend longer on that? Or why don't you move your hand 2 millimeters to the left? That's actually where my clitoris is, right? These sound like real simple things to say, but it's really hard to say them. And it is so much to do with our inbuilt shame and socialization. I mean, there's so many different reasons, but talking about sex is way harder than having it. And so if you're in a long-term relationship, especially, it just gets stagnant. Even if you're looking and learning and reading all of the articles and listening to all of your awesome podcasts, so many great, your head could be full of all of the knowledge, but it takes that little bit of stepping out of the comfort zone to actually start to put it into action.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to at least put a 1 foot forward, because you can't. It's hard. I get it. Like I'm human as well, although some people don't think I am, but I am. You have to push yourself almost to take that first step. I mean, do you find that in your work, whether it's working with people or researching or writing, do you find that people just have a problem like getting past that first step? And I think you're right, because in a relationship, it's almost like the goal is you want to become comfortable as fast as you can. You want to get into that place, but then the side effect of that is you're comfortable, and that's never good. So, like, is there a way? I mean, a double-ended question here, but like, you know, is there a way to put the foot forward to do it, but then when you find yourself kind of falling into this comfortability thing, like how do you snap yourself out of it?
Yeah. And, you know, it's important that when you do find yourself in that comfort zone, that you realize that it's actually the erotic tension that keeps a sex life hot over time. It's that little bit of friction. It's that little bit of nerves. That's what makes the first kiss so hot. That's what makes the first time you're actually having sex together hot, because you don't know what to expect. It's exciting. That's why it's so important to keep novelty in the bedroom, because that novelty is so important. And we'll get into that more, but I need to at least answer one part of your double-ended question. So the first one is, yes, you should fear the comfort zone and keep things exciting. And then the second part of that is, what can you do to take a baby step? Well, there are so many ways that we can break things down. Like, if you have a particular fantasy, there are many, many ways that you can start to bring them up. And of course, talking about it is important, but it doesn't have to be like this huge conversation. You can start by saying, I listened to Dustin's podcast, or I read an article, or you're watching a movie and something comes up on the movie and you say, I'm kind of curious about that. Like, what do you think? Would you be open to trying that? And it's bringing the conversation up in very small ways, repetitively over time. And you can do it via text. That's completely fine. And it's just keeping the conversation open and like dipping a toe. How does your partner respond? How do you feel when they say that? Understanding that both of you have got your initial knee-jerk reactions that come up when we talk about sex. And I'm sure tons of your guests have spoken about this before, that we have the socialization, we have shame. And so if your partner says to you, I'd really love to bring in a vibrator into the bedroom, for some people that's like a massive deal. For others, it's like, oh yeah, whatever, that's a Monday morning. It's understanding that the knee-jerk reaction isn't necessarily the real answer. It's just that needs to come out sometimes. We have a reaction, a response, because hearing that your partner wants to bring something else into the bedroom can make you feel like you're not good enough, that they're not happy with the sex life, that what is this crazy new thing they want to try, and that's scary and unknown. And it's just got this whole lot of, like, it's like a big mental soup that's just like moving around and coming up. And, especially when you talk about things like fantasies and trying, kinkier acts that, can be really triggering for some people. Like, I somehow became like really popular on YouTube with pegging videos. And it's my unexpected claim to fame. But, that is a very dividing, like, that topic is very divisive. There's people that, just cannot even consider the possibility that a straight guy could want that done. And then there's others that are just like, guys, you've just got to try it. It's life-changing. And so that's like one thing, like for a husband to say to his wife, I'm curious about prostate play, like that is a huge thing. There are many, many baby steps that you can take along the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, incredible answer. And then since you mentioned it, we'll go into the pegging realm for a while. So for me, I feel like there's a definite difference in pegging versus prostate play. I mean, they're both sort of the same, but I think there's a dominant submissive, and I mean, I'm just a fucking podcast guy, so feel free to be like, no, you're wrong, Dustin, you fucker. But for me, I just think there's just I think pegging is more a man going into his submissive, and allowing his partner to strap something on and go in the asshole, right? And then on the flip side of that, there's this prostate play where you can have toys or your partner like sticks a finger, in your ass or whatever it is. To me, they're totally different. But again, you're the professional. Do you find that there is that division between the two, or it's all sort of the same, or how do we feel about it?
No, you're completely right. As just a podcaster who's done hundreds of episodes around sex, I think, you can know you're right. So yeah, absolutely. They are different. They're obviously within the same realm. It takes a lot for a straight man, I think, to even allow any kind of exploration around his anus, even rimming, but there's some people that think that's no big deal at all. But definitely pegging is another step. It's another step beyond just prostate play. Absolutely. It's not just prostate massage. It's not using a vibrator. It is actually receiving penetration, and the intention is completely different. And that's why I actually interviewed Ruby Ryder. I don't know if you've ever had her on the show.
Not yet, no, but I'd love to.
Oh, you must get her. She is like the queen of pegging. And she believes pegging will change the world because of that, because it puts the receiver in the position of vulnerability, and because of the mindset shift that is required and the empathy that is required from both parties, that if we are talking about a heterosexual couple, that you've got now the woman actually understanding what is involved in to thrust in that way, like all of the muscles and how hard work that is. And that is without even needing to worry about having an erection. So it's putting yourself in the shoes of the person who's in charge of thrusting, which is something that, you know, most women haven't had to deal with. They haven't had to be the one who is penetrating. And then for the receiver to put themselves in that position of vulnerability and to be submissive, like you said, and to be the one who's passively receiving and just understanding the vulnerability that is required in that. And that's how Ruby Ryder describes it as something that could change the world. And when I spoke with her, I was like, you're not wrong, actually. Like, I could believe you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of incredible points there. To reverse the roles to show how difficult it can be on both ends, and then you have sort of that education.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's maybe a couple reaches a certain place, and the prescription from the couples therapist, the sex therapist, is like, well, time to introduce pegging. That way, you guys will understand. Because there is so much stuff that women do and women go through during sex that men will never understand, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And so I think the thrusting while maintaining an erection, I mean, that's something that no one even really talks about usually, and sometimes you'll have like funny little videos on Instagram where, the guy's like, okay, you try it. And then the chicks are like, trying like humping a pillow, and they're like, wow, this is like really hard or whatever.
Yeah.
So, the idea is there, but yeah. And I think it's wild because behind closed doors, I think so many men are into prostate play, but also they never talk about it, obviously. And then, the pegging thing is like a whole other level of that. And I think there's a lot of people that are into that too. And they just don't, they're never talking about it because there is this like baked in idea of what we have to be as a man and this and that. And that makes you effeminate or gay or whatever it is. And so, I think breaking that down to the point where you realize it has nothing to do with any of those things. I don't care what point anybody could make again, but just from the podcast guy, I will tell you it has nothing to do with the way you identify sexually at all.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
It is important, but that is the thing that comes up again and again. And like you said, it's a shame because how many men are out there curious about this and interested in trying it, but they're too scared to bring it up to their partner because of the fear of judgment and the fear of even judging themselves. What does that say about me if I'm curious about that? I repeat this over and over again. Having a part of your body stimulated doesn't change your orientation. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You're not going to find a switch up there.
Right. Yeah. And there's this weird thing where, and I've seen it in people that I sort of, from my hometown, which is a lot more closed-minded than whatever. And a lot of, I don't know, I see it a lot in more of like the red pilly kind of people on the internet, but it's this idea that if you like a finger in the ass, or if you experiment with pegging or whatever, that maybe you're not gay, but it will turn you gay. And I think that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever. To me, it's so like, how did we get to the point, like as a world, or more or less like in the United States, I mean everywhere, but where people are worried that being gay is like, it's like an infection that can get inside you or something. And I mean, there's so much there, but I'll let you take the wheel. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's a huge topic. It is enormous, really. And it just is a really great illustration. I think I just went straight in there with the biggest illustration I could think of how we can break things down into baby steps if you've got a fantasy or a desire, right? And how there's so much to unpack when it comes to our desires, our needs, our curiosities, and our fantasies, that it's not just, I'm curious. I've heard that there's this prostate that can bring intense pleasure to me. I'm curious about touching it. And also I'm terrified because of X, Y, and Z, and it's, I don't think together that we could unpack all of that. It's just so enormous and so subjective that it comes down to each of us to identify. And the interesting thing, something that I don't know if you've ever heard of a sexual attitude reassessment or readjustment, SAR. It is a professional training that people in the sexual education and the sexual health world are recommended to do. And essentially, it's like Fight Club. You don't talk about it, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's a 2-day. So I did a virtual SAR. It's relevant to what we're saying, but it's essentially an opportunity to be exposed to a wide variety of sexual stimuli it's obviously online since COVID. It's been online. So it's a lot of video, and interviews and a lot of pornographic clips and a very interesting, very, 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 very interesting medley of clips that you're exposed to it over 2 days. With a closed group, and there's like breakout sessions and things. It's wonderful. It's a really great learning experience. Anybody who is in this world professionally, I recommend you go and do a SAR. But my takeaway from the SAR experience was I was so touched by the amount of time and effort and energy that people do put into their sex life. Like how much they actually invest in it and how they really make it a part of their life. I came away so inspired by that. It didn't matter what they were doing or what I felt about what they were doing, because some of the things were, more on the shocking side, and that's super subjective. That was the whole point of it. It was to, shock you a little bit and help you to look at your prejudice. But that's what I took away. And that's something that, although I'm a super geeky book kind of sex educator, I'm also super lucky to be in a relationship where we love to just try things and we go and experience things, and we learn from that way too, and we're both divorced. This is our second marriage, and we are determined to create a sex life that we love, and so I'm practicing what I preach, and it's so doable. You can go from being somebody like me who was faking orgasms constantly, scared to dare even think about what my fantasies might be, to a space where it's now a big part of our lives, and we take our fantasies seriously and we explore together and we have so much fun. And it's really helped me with my teaching. It's helped me so much because, like you said, I can take the stuff from the books and the studies and the articles and the research and the doctors, and I can put it into real life and real words and actually make it make sense in the bedroom.
Yeah. And that's what's needed to have the sexual sort of freedom and sex life with your partner that you are striving to have, right? And you're trying to teach others how to do that. Where would somebody find, well, I know we're not supposed to talk about it because it's like Fight Club, but like where would somebody find one of these sexual assessment things that they could do themselves?
So you can search online. Lots of different places host them. Sexual attitude reassessment. So I'll send you a link. Sex Coach U is the original SAR. And there's also a book if you want to run your own SAR, but I'll give you a link to add to the notes. But it's honestly a real eye-opening experience and personally growing, it helps you to grow. It's incredible. I can still remember so much of it, but I don't even, as I'm saying it, I'm wondering how much am I allowed to say? Like, I don't want to get in trouble,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're just trying to help people who are going to be Googling SARS. Yes. We don't want to send them down the wrong path. So we're just trying to help. So everybody relax. We're not giving away any secrets. Yes. Yeah. We don't want them Googling some other disease that could have taken over the world a decade
Oh,
ago.
yeah. That was also called Spa.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So we just want to point them in the right direction. Okay. Well, one thing I did want to ask is, say there is someone who does want their partner to stick a finger in their ass, right? And they've never asked for that. Their sex life is sort of vanilla, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But baby steps, right? What are the baby steps to that? And maybe it's not that. Maybe, they saw somebody in like a gag ball, or they're into whatever it is. How do you, because I like to ask this of all the professionals on the show, but how do you introduce that? Is that are you doing that before the table is set at dinner? Are you doing that like in between the main course and the appetizer? What are we sitting each other down? Are we going to, because these are big things. So are we taking big moments to talk about them, or is it more nonchalant? Like, oh, hey, by the way, when I come home from work, I got a little something for you in a bag in the back.
Just to whip out
don't look.
the ball gag.
Yeah, sure.
Don't talk about it in bed first. That's one thing I would say. But there's no hard and fast rule here. It depends on where you're at. Where is your baseline communication? Do you already talk a little bit about sex? Do you have a regular conversation or regular moments where you've kind of cleared, you've carved out space for each other? That's important. And then the kind of baby steps that you would take here are firstly just bringing up that you've come across this thing. You're curious about this thing, whatever it might be, right? So you can say a ball gag, for example. I'm curious about trying this, or I'm curious about having something in my mouth during sex, right? You could maybe take one aspect of it and see. So you've got to get creative so that you can sense how your partner feels and help them to kind of get up to speed with you. Because often when somebody has a fantasy or a curiosity that they want to try, they've been thinking about it for a very long time. They've probably done a lot of research. They know everything there is to know about this. They already know where to buy it if they don't already have one in the cupboard. And to just drop it on your partner like that is asking for a big response, right? We need to just go in baby steps. You know your partner, right? The person knows their partner. So it's just about giving them the respect to allow them to process things too, right? It might sound like this is also ridiculously big for a ball gag, but this is objective. This is subjective, right? Some people are going to find that really huge and some people are not. So you start by taking one element. I'm curious about why don't you put your finger in my mouth? For example, I'm curious about having something to bite. Like, what is it that you're curious about? How can you bring that in slowly, right? And see, how would you feel if we did that? And then a really great opportunity to ramp things up is after sex, when you're lying down. Maybe you tried one little step, like they put their finger in your mouth or you bit them or something like that. You can say, I really enjoyed having your finger in my mouth. Like, thank you for trying that. Always being positive. We're always going to focus on the positive. Thanking them for trying this, letting them know what you enjoyed, seeing how they felt about it, and then asking them if they would consider trying it again or upping it a little bit next time, right? So it's just like a continued, like it's a journey. Like one of our fantasies, for example, we've spent years building up to the real thing, right? So along the way, the other kinds of things you can do are reading erotica on the subject, like reading erotica together or watching porn in that genre, right? So how does it feel to watch the porn? Does it feel good? Is it a turn on? Is it actually like, oh, that's too much? Listening to podcasts on the topic, reading books, learning about it. If it's a kink, like if you're interested in bondage, learning how to do the knots correctly. Maybe you can go to a workshop and learn from a shibari expert, getting the safety shears, there's lots of little steps you can take along the way. If you're interested, which is a super, super popular fantasy, but if you're interested in bringing somebody else into the bedroom, you want to bring a third person, why don't you try bringing in a realistic dildo initially, or a realistic, like a fleshlight? So you've got that extra genitals, there's extra genitals in the room. how does that feel? How would that fit in? How would it work? You know, so it's constantly working together. I mean, this advice is specifically for a couple that is trying something gradually over time, and knowing that it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to stop at any point. If porn of the genre was enough, that's absolutely fine. There's no pressure to say you're going to like it at the end of the day. Even if it's something like pegging, maybe you were like, I'm really curious about pegging, and you agree to start off with rimming, and then you're actually like, actually, no, I'm not ready for that at all. Okay, cool. So there's never any pressure to go through with the entire fantasy. There's never any pressure to actually like it. It's like if you go out for go to a restaurant and you want to try escargot for the first time, that's okay. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. Like, it's still okay to have a taste and maybe try it again next time. They say you need like 7 tastes, right, before you like something. So if it's a little bit clunky in the bedroom the first time you try, or the second time, or the third time, that's also okay. Like, sex is awkward at first. Sex is clunky when you're trying something new. Remember the first time you had sex, it was probably a little bit awkward. You don't know where everything goes, and the hands are like, oh, where should I put my hands? So give yourself permission to like get it a bit wrong, for it to be messy, for it to be awkward, for you not to like it. Like, just let yourself be human.
Yeah, that's so important. Just that one line, let yourself be human. And I think if you're, you have to have a partner who is on the same page, ideally, right? But then you also have to have someone who, if they're not on the same page, they're open-minded enough to, because people, I mean, there are mismatches with people. And I hate to say this because I'm always the guy that's like, just talk to your partner, 99% guarantee they'll just go along with it. I know that that's not always the case, but I think, you know, with partner selection for some of these things, I think you should try, right? You should try to bring them over to where you're at as, in terms of what you're thinking. But sometimes maybe there's a partner that's not willing to come over, right? And that suggests a whole different problem where it's like, okay, maybe can I live without this thing and all those things? And like, I hate when anyone would even have to ask that, right? So, I mean, are there cases where something sexual, like in your world or that you're familiar with, where it's just like, okay, this just isn't happening. I've tried, and I just don't think that I can be in this relationship, right? Because there's a whole other set of shame that comes with that. Like, oh, you broke up with her or him over something sexual. Like, then there's just like this judgment, right? In most, I guess, like boring, normal circles of people. But sex is so important because it's not about just like busting a nut or else we would just be fine because we can do that on our own or hire someone or buy something or whatever, right? And or hire a sex worker or whatever. But I think we downplay the sexual compatibility of a partner because sometimes it's just not going to work. So can you talk a little bit about what happens in that scenario and maybe your experience with that?
That's such a good question. I'm glad you brought it up because you're right. We are all individuals. We are 2 sexual individuals and growing into our sexuality as time goes by, and we may end up finding that we're not as compatible as we wanted to be. And you definitely come across situations where one person is just not okay doing what you want them to do. Like you'll have just pegging has been the theme of the day. So there's, you can get women that just will not peg their partner no matter what. They just won't because of, all of their conditioning and what they think that means. And so if you are somebody who wants to be pegged and your partner will not peg you, then what do? That's difficult. For any sex act, everybody has the right to say no, of course. Even if you're married, if you've been married for 10 million years, we cannot pressure or guilt or coerce anybody to do anything they don't want to do. So that is the bottom line. If there is a little bit of discomfort, that you're a little bit nervous and feel a bit vulnerable, that's different. Then maybe we can find ways to make it more comfortable for everybody involved. But if it's a hard limit, if it's an absolute no, then what you have to do is accept, unfortunately, right? There's often like a bit of a grieving that's involved in that. If, for example, you really want to bring a third person into the bedroom and your partner just like cannot, then that can be really sad to, accept that that's not going to be an experience that you're going to be able to have in this relationship. Mm-hmm. So then you can get creative. Perhaps there are solutions that will work that allow both partners to have their needs met and to not have their limits pushed, to not have their boundaries breached. And that can look different depending on what the fantasy is and depending on what the couple wants. And in some instances, the relationship isn't right for that person. If this part of the sexuality is so important to you as an individual, and this is a part of your identity, and if you're not able to have it and it's so important to you, then that is a valid reason to leave a relationship, in my opinion. It can be, and this question has been asked to me in a number of ways, talking about fetishes, for example, with like, say your husband has a fetish and wants you to wear red stilettos in the bedroom, and he's not able to get an erection without those red stilettos, and you just cannot put them on. Then what can you do? Can you have the red stilettos in the room? Would that work for him? Could you say red stiletto? Could you wear red socks? Like, obviously this is just a silly example, but it's coming up with ways to try to see what is it about the stiletto that was really important to him, and what is it that you could do to meet that. So it's finding a way around. And interestingly, I think as couples that are open to this kind of thing, to learning about each other and diving into the erotic mind of one another, they can have the most fulfilling, rich sex life. And it can be like nothing you would have imagined, like nothing you could read on the articles, right? Because it's something that they've crafted together through years of vulnerable communication and understanding and creativity and doing what it takes. It's so hard to communicate a fantasy because the fear of judgment, and what does it mean if I'm so into your feet, or if I want you to pee on me, like what on earth does that mean about me? And having the courage to actually communicate it, even if your partner is going to judge you, is huge. And if your partner can be in a space where they can think, wow, that doesn't really appeal to me, but let's try and learn about it, rather than being, you're disgusting, oh, you're so gross. This is a big part of what I actually teach in my course. There's the final module, which is trying to keep your sex life spicy for life, because fantasy is important. I really believe it is. And interestingly, a lot of women don't think that they have a fantasy. And this is often because they imagine that you have to have this big, elaborate storyline, like, Princess Leia in a silver bikini and, this whole big storyline. But what actually a fantasy often is a snippet of a thought, or an idea, or for a lot of women, it can just be knowing that they're in the center with all of these kind of like being ravished by all of these faceless people. And well, maybe I'm just talking about myself.
That's awesome.
But it's like understanding that all of those curiosities are valid and worthwhile. It's worth digging into them. And reading smut, I think it's got to be my top tip of the day. Reading smut and listening to audio erotica, and just like letting yourself go down the rabbit hole of what turns you on. Like that is where the gold is. That's where you're going to find little snippets. Like, how can you bring that into your bedroom? How can you, and it's not about reenacting the whole thing. Like, what is it that turned you on there? Get curious.
Yeah, I love that you said rabbit hole. I think you got to find the rabbit hole and go, and you have to go down it, even if it's just in your own, like it's you with your hand, or it's you with the vibrator, or it's you, like that's, you have to allow, okay, even though I feel shameful about it, I'm going to lock the door and take this hour and just see what happens, right? Like in my mind, in my body. And that is so important to find that rabbit hole and really dive in, because whatever you can bring back is going to be really, really important. And what you're thinking up here, I think, it's trying to tell you something, like
Yeah.
whatever you find in the rabbit hole, right? You had a Star Wars reference, like, you know, when Luke goes into the cave, it really tells him all he needs to know about who he is, what he needs to do, and how he needs. Like, it's the same thing when you go into your rabbit hole, you come out with, okay, wait a minute, I like gangbangs. Apparently, I don't know if I really want to have one, but maybe I want to talk to my partner about that idea. And there's many things happening here, and we're in the rabbit hole, and I love it. So I want to jump back real quickly to something you said, because I think it's important. You said even though this is a silly example, but the red stilettos, right? I think sex is so serious that we need to be silly about it, right?
Yeah.
We need to have silly. I mean, some of the shit that gets us off, and we still don't have any idea where it's even coming from. And at the end of the day, it has to be a little silly. I think the sillier, the more fun, because it is this serious sort of, it has a lot of darkness and all these things around it. But I think if you can get silly with a partner, and like, you know, when the lube malfunctions and it blasts the fucking all over the window or whatever, you have to laugh a little bit, right? And not be embarrassed. So
Absolutely.
I think it's important what you said about the silly examples. And I love that. You know, everything we're talking about, because you mentioned earlier about novelty, and here we are talking about how important these things are in the bedroom. I mean, just from my perspective, I think novelty and, you know, silliness slash like willingness to have an open mind are the most important things. You got to get, and again, just from the podcast side, you're the expert, not me, but you have to get a little fucking weird, you know, right?
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, and look, like, let's just talk about the title of your podcast, like sex parties. Like, that takes courage. That takes courage to go to a sex party. Definitely. And, I'm going to tell you a story now. I'm going to tell you a little story about a sex party.
We love stories. Yeah.
So when you are in a couple, like I am, we always say never. That's like our slogan. Still, consent is obviously a thing, but yes, never say never. And one thing that we has been curious to try is a sex party. And we had an opportunity that came up, and it was a sex party that was actually a planned orgy. So it's quite a lot to go for your very first time. So it was a planned orgy, and it had quite strict rules. So the rules were that you had to attend naked or in lingerie. You had to partake, like there was no voyeurs allowed. It was only participants. And there were a few other rules like that. So this is like the real life, what happens then as a couple who's like, okay, so we're going to try this. Okay, yeah, cool. And then you discuss together, like, what are your limits and what do you feel comfortable with? And you know, those conversations go on for like a few days in the lead up. They also can be really hot. Like, the conversations can be hot. When we're preparing to do things together, that is hot for us. And then we are going to be like, sex is going to be awesome, like extra awesome during that period of the build up to it, right? Because it's this unknown thing is coming, it's like this friction, this excitement, this anticipation. And for some people, that is enough. Like, just the talking about the thing is enough. That is hot, right? Yep. Even like, okay, I'm going to go back to the sex party thing, but even if you think you have a daddy kink, for example, right? And you are brave enough to tell your partner, you know, maybe I'd kind of like if you call me daddy. Like, I read this book and it was a daddy and it was really hot. And then he's like, okay, cool. So now you're together. And then he's like, oh, are you going to like sit on my daddy cock? And then all of a sudden you're like, no, abort. That was too. And then you're like, okay, maybe it needs to be a figure of male authority, but not dad, you know? So those are the kind of tweaks that you make in the moment. Like, you know, I'm so grateful you said daddy, but actually that was really not cool for me. It was a turn off in the end, even though I thought it was going to be cool. So if you're able to collaborate like that, it's epic. Anyway, back to the orgy. So the fun thing was, now we're on our way to the orgy and we're like super excited and nervous. And being the nerd geek, I've done all of my research. I'm sending articles so that my husband can be prepared. Like, okay, this is the etiquette and this is what you should do. And then, you know, it was very funny. Anyway, so we arrived We were the first ones there, apart from the hosts. And they were very enthusiastic and excited. And so I was like, okay, get down to my lingerie, and we're kind of ready. And then people started arriving, but they were fully dressed. And I was like, oh, okay, they're fully dressed. That's okay. Maybe it's still early. Maybe this is not orgy o'clock. But as the night progressed, it remained that way. There was somebody doing shibari, so I had like a bit of rope. I was tied up, and so then I was like, okay, look, I'm obviously following the rules. If there's rules, I'm going to follow them. Okay, if there's rules that you got to be naked, I'm going to be doing that. So anyway, I was waiting for everyone else to follow the rules. Like the beds were set up and the lights and everything, and nobody continued from there. Everybody, it was like they just wanted to hang out and have fun together. But like we in South Africa, we say a braai, like a barbecue. They just wanted to hang out and braai, but there was no braai actually. Just wanted to just chat to each other. And so we were like, is this normal? This is like the orgy that never was. And so then we like give each other like this kind of look, because top tip, if you're going to have a long-term relationship, we have got it down to like, we know when we've had enough of a party, and we are excellent at timing it at the same time that we want to leave. And so we gave each other the look, and we were like, okay, let's go. And yeah, we just left. It was like, okay, cool. So we had so much fun because we had all of the prep, the decision to actually go, which was huge, the run up, the choosing what to wear, the getting there, the undressing, like it was, all of that was such fun, even though it didn't even happen. That was really cool. It was a great experience for us. We learned so much. And, maybe that's actually, I don't even know if orgies really happen. Dustin, tell me, what is the story there?
Well, okay, first of all, so all these other clown people broke the rules. Like, I thought the rules were you had to be in. So did you say, like, wait a minute, why is it this guy's in a full suit over here? What's going on? Like, yeah, did you ever ask?
No, actually. And we're the newbies. So I didn't want to be like, when are you going to get your clothes off?
Oh my God.
What is the etiquette there? Yeah, it was weird.
I've actually never heard of that, unless it was something where because you guys were new, that was like your initiation into something, but that seems cruel.
Yeah,
so
I
don't really understand. That's really, really strange. I feel like
Are you saying it was me? It was me, right? Everyone kept the
No, not at all. I'm saying that like that was very misrepresentative of whatever they were trying to do. I've heard, we've had many people on the show, and obviously the things that I've been privy to outside the show, there are places that are, I mean, to enter a certain part of the party, you can't have clothes on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that seems very common. But the idea that they would say, hey, these are hard line rules. You have to be in lingerie. You have to be naked. And then you show up and like take the overcoat, the trench coat off, and whatever. And then everybody else shows up like fully clothed. Wait, were the hosts naked too, or no?
In lingerie, yes, they were. And then a couple of the women were, but it just didn't progress. And there was a room, the door was right there, it was open and available, but just nobody went there either. So I don't know. But then the longer it went on, the more awkward it became. And I was thinking, wow, this is crazy.
Well, I mean, someone has to take the bathing suit off and cannonball into the pool. Someone's got to be the first one, right? Like in that situation. Usually in my, in my college years, like that person was me. I was like, hey, let's get naked or whatever. And I was the first. I was always the first one into the pool. So, but someone's got to take the initiative, right? So it just sounds like maybe who failed you was your host, because they're supposed to provide an atmosphere of comfortability, but also like action. Like, hey, like we're gonna start this fucking Sibian up or whatever, and we're gonna ride it or whatever. Like they have to do something to initiate enough of the charcuterie board, get into the the sex now or whatever. So it sounds like they just flopped it, and maybe people were just like kind of waiting. There's probably a lot of those people are saying the same thing you did. Like, that was weird. What happened? And then
maybe it was the wrong night.
Yeah. Or maybe you just went to the wrong house, right?
And they're like,
That's
who are
so
these
great.
people without their clothes on?
Right. And a couple people
Yeah,
followed you over there.
possible.
Yeah. Well, I think
Stranger
that,
things have happened.
oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's important that you guys, I mean, were you guys nervous about attending something like that together? What were your rules? Like, were you both allowed to then go and like kind of pursue things on your own, or were you sticking together? And like, was it women only for you, or like, what did that look like?
We have got very diverse rules that I'm not going to share on this show, but we have our rules. And we are very comfortable. We've taken a long time to negotiate our rules, apart from the never say never. We've got things are good. Yeah, but I'm not going to tell you.
Well, to each their own. We're not the show that pushes stuff like that. But I think, that having rules is important, and you can't, you have to talk about them till you're sick of talking about them, or else you're not going to get, it's really, really important.
I agree. I also think we're quite flexible in some ways. Yeah, I do think so. We're very comfortable. And this actually wouldn't be advice that I would give everybody, but we are in a place where we feel like we could try something, and if it didn't work, we would just talk about it tomorrow. Like, it's not like we would potentially push our boundaries more than I would recommend that everybody does. That's what I'm saying. Knowing that we are solid and that we can talk about it tomorrow. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying I feel like we've progressed beyond baby steps to maybe little jumps, little hops.
I mean, because I think a lot of threesomes, or even like, I mean, we've heard a lot of disasters on this show, on this podcast. And it's like, those things happen when the rules aren't, the rules aren't really discussed. And two, it's different when you actually see it happen, instead of like, so many threesomes end in like, wait, or like stop, like, so like having a safe word, all the things. It's a lot different when you see it for the first time.
I think so. And like, also just not underestimating the awkward moments, the first moment when you're all together in the room, like, who's going to make the first move? Just like the orgy, I suppose, the orgy that never was. Someone has to make the first move. Someone has to do that. And you're right. Like, those are the turning points. Those moments can make or break it, like your confidence in the moment, which is why I think it's important to try things more than once, and not judge yourself too harshly if the first time was a complete flop. So maybe I should find another orgy. So note to self.
So that you guys haven't tried a second one yet?
No. But also where we live, there's not like very many options, to be honest. There's it's not like Orgyville over here. Not that I know of.
Well, that's the thing, is that there's a whole secret society to orgies, I think.
Well, if anyone's in South Africa,
give her a ring, for sure. They'll find you. They'll find you after this, for sure. Well, I mean, that's interesting because, the reason why we've been at this for months trying to get you on the show is because you were working on something that I think we've sort of danced around and touched. And I want to make sure that we really talk about it, because I think it's really, really cool. But you've been working on something that goes right along with everything that we've talked about. And so I want to give you a moment to talk about this new project, this new program that you have, because it is set up in a way that I think is really professional, but it has like, from what I've seen of it, it has a lot of room for like personal and development with your relationships. And, I mean, again, almost the whole point of this episode is like talking about how to keep it horny, how to keep it hot. And I think people, once they think the spark, wink, is out, right? That's it, that it's over, and it's not. And so I think with that, I would love for you to tell them what you've been working on.
Thank you, Dustin. Okay. Yes.
Of course.
So it is a blueprint that I've called Flames because I love an acronym. You won't be surprised now you know what a geek I am. It's designed for men in committed relationships to help them to have more sex, basically. And I created this in response to the number of DMs that I got from men saying, oh, my wife is just never wants sex and our sex life is dead, or we just, sexless marriage. That was the predominant theme of my inbox. And I used to feel frustrated because I couldn't answer in a DM. I couldn't answer that and help in a DM. And this has actually been, it was a complete 180 shift for me because I always helped women in my content. And so now I've shifted to helping men, and I'm helping men to understand women. Helping men to understand how to keep the spark alive. And as you said, I rebranded to Save That Spark. And the Flames blueprint is what I've been working on for, I feel like, forever. And essentially, it's just like a 5-step, 6-step, 6-step blueprint. And it helps men to understand all of the things that they need to have in place in order to have an epic sex life forever, including understanding the myths that we've all been told about sex. So understanding why the clitoris is so important. It's taking away, stopping all of that shaming and blaming of men, men just don't get it. They just don't know where the clitoris is or whatever. It's stopping all of that. And it's accepting that none of us have really been told properly what the clitoris is or why it matters so freaking much. So it teaches them that. It's like the foundations. Then it's how to talk about sex in bed in very simple steps, how to actually communicate, how to encourage her to tell you what she likes, even if she doesn't even know what she likes right now. Emotional intimacy, how to initiate sex so that she's keen, how to learn how to pleasure her, I literally show you. I use a fleshlight to show you exactly how to pleasure her. And then the final part is pretty much what we've been speaking about today, and that is sustaining that passion. What can you do to keep up the novelty, understanding how important novelty is for her libido? It is essential. Plus, there's a whole section on how to deal with the penis you have. Is your penis average or small size? What can you do? Is it too big? Too big. What I mean is it bigger? No judgment. Is it on the bigger side? Are you dealing with any erectile difficulties? So I also talk about that. There's a lot of penis appreciation for me. I appreciate penises. What I mean is there's no shame. I don't want to shame anybody. I don't think many people don't even realize that a flaccid penis can ejaculate. You don't even need an erection. Penises are valid and deserve to be loved in all of their forms. So there's that as well. I want this to empower guys, empower them to actually know what they need to do to make that connection strong and hot, to make sex fun again for everybody. And it's not just oh, you need to do this, you should be doing that. It's not that. It's saying, you're by doing this blueprint, you're taking on the responsibility, which is awesome. And you are empowered to actually make changes and have the kind of sex life that you deserve, because everybody deserves to have an awesome sex life. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're helping everyone. It sounds like you're helping women and men,
Yes.
because, the women are going to appreciate you a lot, right? And you've already worked with women. And do you still work with women one-on-one or anything, or?
I'm not at the moment. I'm not working with anybody one-on-one at the moment. No. And yes, this was created with wives in mind, very much, very much. What my dream is for that, if a wife or a partner discovers that her man is looking at my stuff, that she'll be stoked, that she won't be upset about it, that she'll be like, oh, yes.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, for sure. No, I love that. So a couple questions I just want to fire at you, because everything we said is beautiful and perfect, and I love it. And now I want to introduce a little fun chaos, but also a little more value, right? If you had to put a number on it, like, and again, we're generalizing because we can do that because fuck it, whatever. It's a snapshot, right? Let's just say that it's a poll. It's just a moment in time. Like right now, what would you say is the percentage of marriages and or relationships that don't work out because of something sexual in nature?
I wish I knew the answer to this, but
Sure.
I mean, divorce rates are really high, right? Isn't it like 50% in America? Something
I think
like
it's 60
that.
actually.
Sure, that is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know how many are as a result of sex, but there is that story that if sex is not a problem in your marriage, then it's only 10% importance. But if sex is a problem, then it becomes 90% important. Just does that make sense? If you're not having it, it's a massive problem. If you are having it, it's just wait, I'm not explaining this well. You know why? Because it's past my bedtime, Dustin. What I'm saying is, if you are not having sex, then it suddenly becomes more of a oh, you know what I'm trying to say. You try and tell me.
I think you're fine. No, you think you're fine. If you're fine, if you're not having sex, do you have a problem? How's that, right? If you are having sex, it could probably always be better. So talk about it. That's what I would say.
Okay, thanks. That's way better.
Yeah, for sure. I probably totally botched it too, but who cares? It's the end of the episode. Whatever.
But I've got to show you something before we go.
No, yeah, sure.
Well, this is in line with the penis appreciation.
Okay.
I got to show you this. This painting. So this is for people who are listening. They won't be able to see it, but this is a painting. Tell them what you can see.
Can you hold it? If you could hold it up, if you could hold it up more. Okay, she's holding up a painting, and don't leave the audio version of this and go over to YouTube, you fuckers. Stay here and listen to this, and then go over to YouTube. Does it say Picasso on it?
So it's a painting of me, actually, and it says Picasso.
Picasso. Yeah.
So it was actually painted with a penis.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
See, now they're leaving the audio version. Going
sorry.
Over to YouTube, right? No. That's fun. That's fun. Whatever. Well, they're not going to leave. They're going to want to hear the ending of this. Whatever. Yeah. That's awesome. That's painting with a penis.
How cool is that? So this artist is called Picasso. He's from Australia, and he is a regular guest at the Sex Expo in South Africa. And so I sat down for a portrait, and he did this massive painting of me with his penis. And I mean, it was quite an incredible thing to witness. And
wow, yeah, I bet.
Pretty good, right?
I mean, so you were sitting there posed, he was painting a self-portrait of you with his penis.
Yeah, literally.
What was that experience like to watch someone paint you with their penis? Were you laughing?
I was laughing my head off. And so he actually has quite a long penis, and he had like all of these different cups of paint, and he would like dip his penis in, and then he was holding the canvas quite low down while he like painted with his penis.
That is so cool.
And like the edge of the canvas, he actually got like a handful of paint and then slid it under his balls and then pulled the canvas through it. So like all of his body, his bum has been on this painting, but mostly his penis. And then how he signed it, because there's obviously quite a crowd of people watching, because the actual creation of the art is like very interesting. And so everyone's laughing and taking pictures and amazed. And he looks like quite a sight because he wears this gigantic pink, like cowboy hat. And then nude with cowboy boots, pink cowboy boots as well. You should look him up, Picasso.
No, this guy's amazing. Why are we not trying to get him to do more stuff? That thing looks incredibly accurate for someone who painted that with their cock.
I know. So, but you know how he signed it? He actually put a paintbrush down his urethra.
No way.
Yes, he did.
Wow. What the fuck? That's incredible. I mean, again, when you're done listening, go over to YouTube and check it out. But holy shit, that's awesome. That's one of the most profoundly fun things that we've had on this show. I think that's amazing. Okay, so what I want to pivoting from that at the end, two more general questions, but I think they're important. I think they're fun. And you're the first guest that I'm just like, I think I'm going to start doing this almost in every episode just to sort of see where we wind up 30 episodes after this. But question one, right? Talk to men on what they're doing wrong or what they can do better when it comes to eating pussy. And then I'll give you question two.
Ooh, slow down. I think slow down and pick one or two moves and just stick with that. And add fingers. Did you say I can only have two?
Oh no, you can have as many. You can give as much advice as you want, but I have another question after that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm just going to say pick one or two moves focusing on the clit and be consistent with your rhythm and add a couple of fingers and read her body language. Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with like either like little circles or write your name, little up and down diagonal, but just like don't do all of them at once. Like choose a couple, add a little bit of suction. Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, no, love that. Love that advice. What great advice. Okay, question two then is we're going to flip it. What are women doing wrong when it comes to sucking cock?
Oh, I think maybe being too gentle. I think in general, a lot of men are quite rougher on their cock than women are with their pussy, for example. So for men, go softer, and for women, go a little bit harder. Add a hand at the base of the shaft, and like, just don't worry about getting messy. Like, go for it. Don't worry about the noises and the mess, and just like, be really enthusiastic. You don't need to know 20 different techniques, actually. You want to try and keep your teeth out of the way, but just enthusiastic. Add a little bit of suction, like a bit of a vacuum, a little bit of tongue swilling and up and down motion. And again, you're good to go. In other words, I'm like quite back to basics in that you don't need a gazillion techniques, but you do need consistency, and you don't need to worry about what you look like while you're doing it, especially for the cock sucking. Like, that's actually a bonus if you look a bit messy.
Yeah. If you look fucked up and crazy while you're sucking dick, you're going to fucking win every time. Like, just pretend, and this is coming from me, not her, but like, just pretend like someone has like a gun to the back of your head and you're going to die unless you get this person off. Like, just fucking go ballistic. That's what I would say. And I would say the same thing for men. Like you slow down and be gentle, but like really get your face in there and into the clit.
Don't be scared.
Put your tongue, take it from a guy with a big mouth.
Yeah.
you gotta get in there and you gotta really work it, and consistency, I think, is insanely underrated.
Yeah.
Especially for men and women, because we need that same thing for our bodies to charge up and then blast off.
100%. Consistency and enthusiasm. Like, that's also really important. And especially for women, they often feel like kind of nervous about their vulva. Like, how does it look? How does it smell? How does it taste? But if you're like, this is the best thing ever, like, I'm just loving it. Like, this is like the most delicious risotto. I had to say risotto.
You had to work it in.
That's my favorite food. But no, I mean, whatever you enjoy, like this most delectable feast, what a privilege it is for you to be able to have it. Like, yes, show that you are finding it a delicious privilege.
Yeah, make fucked up noises, growl. I mean, I loved, you gave incredible advice. Lisa Welsh, thank you so much for being with me on Sex Party. This has been an amazing rabbit hole to go down with you. Can we tell them, because now they want everything that you offer. So where can they find you on socials? Where can they find your courses, everything? Where can they just come with their whole bank account and dump it onto your desk?
You can find me at Save That Spark. Save That Spark on YouTube and Instagram and online and all the places. I would love to, come and say hi. Come and say hi. And come and check out my video on pegging, that's like my claim to fame.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're rushing over there now. Well, I mean, I would love to have you back. I think there's so much more for us to talk about, so we'll have to set that up here momentarily. But thank you so much for being on the show, for being yourself. It's been incredible, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Dustin. It's been really such fun to chat with you. I've loved being a guest on your show. So thank you. Thanks for having the patience while we rescheduled 5,000 times.
Yeah, podcasting is all about patience. So I'm a very patient wolf, so we're good there. But I'm glad we finally did this.
Me too. Thank you.
Talk soon. Big thank you to my guest, Lisa Welsh, for being with me on the show this week. Make sure you go check out everything she is doing. Go check out her new program. Go check out her on socials. Lisa will be back in the future. If you love guests like Lisa and you're loving Sex Party and you want to make sure you never miss an episode, what can you do? Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll get to you in a second. But if you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you can leave a rating. You could leave a review, sure, but fuck all that noise. What you want to do is you want to make sure you're subscribed to the show so you never miss a new episode every single Wednesday, especially if you are listening on Apple Podcasts. Apple's been unsubscribing people to all kinds of podcasts for whatever reason. So go to Apple Podcasts. Even if you think you're subscribed, let's just double check. Go to Apple Podcasts, go to Sex Party with Dustin Rybka. In the upper right-hand corner, there's some sort of button. You want to tap that button until it's a check mark. You want to hit that button. A drop-down menu will appear. Click on resubscribe or resume downloads, whatever it is. You want to see a check mark when you're done. Boom, you're resubscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, see, now it's your turn. If you're watching on YouTube, I love you. I see you. I appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, have you ever had a sexual experience that was really amazing, but then you never told anybody about it? You keep it to yourself, but you think about it all the time? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, what can you do? You could leave a comment. You guys know I love when you leave comments. We love to then answer those comments on the show, good or bad. You could like all the videos. That's great too. But what you really want to make sure you're doing is subscribing to the channel so you never miss a new episode every single Wednesday. As always, I'm available in the DMs on Instagram, and I will see you all right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.